Today we're going to discuss belief. What does it mean to make an act of belief, and what does it mean to do so firmly? First though, let's just do a little recap. We began by just looking at the truth. In other words, knowledge of self and knowledge of God. Who am I? And I only know that answer by knowing who He is, and to the extent that I know who He is. Remember that scene where Peter was given revelation to know who the Son of God was. And when Christ asks, who do people say the Son of Man is? Peter's the one who says, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And at that moment, because God the Father had given Peter revelation, he'd given him light to be able to see what he could not possibly have seen simply by virtue of looking at Christ, because no one knew who he was. They all thought he was someone who was already dead, Elijah, one of the prophets, but not the Son of God, because no one knew that God had a son, an eternal son. That's a gift from the Father that was given to St. Peter. But what happened when that revelation was given and Peter spoke it is that then Christ revealed to Peter who he was, because remember, before that, he was Simon. But participating in the act of faith, in the act of seeing who God is in the Son, then the Son revealed to Simon that you thought you were a fisherman, but you're Peter, and you happen to be the rock upon which I'm going to build my church. So what we find is that knowledge of self and knowledge of God that we spoke about earlier comes to the fore in this virtue, this theological virtue of faith. And it causes us to do things like to pray, to be able to see more, to take what God has revealed and to speak to Him about it, to grow in our relationship with Him that is both His gift to us by grace received in the sacraments, and finally, of course, in the friendship that we delight in, our friendship with God and with the members of His mystical body. So this act of belief is not the same thing as simply a human act of belief. Let me give you an example. When you were a child, you perhaps played make-believe. There's some scene that you wanted to create with your friends, some story that you wanted to act out. For a boy, every stick became a sword or a gun. And I'm not sure what the girls did, but that's what we did. And there was always war going on somewhere, and all sorts of different games that we would create and all the various rules that were there. We all had to live in the character, because the moment that someone didn't, right, it was up. Everyone had to participate and make believe. That is not what we're doing when it comes to the faith. I'm not playing make believe. Also, we use the word belief in an analogous sense to faith, the way we believe in something normally. So for example, you believe what people tell you, by and large. We all do. We have to, or else society can't run. If I had to ask the question, living on a lack of trust, every single thing and every single move that I made, based upon whether or not I trusted that person. Right? Should I cross the street when there's a green light? Maybe the government now wants me to cross the street at a red light. They change it because they want me to die. Right? You can't live like that, obviously. You have to trust on some level. And so most things, most decisions that you make, you do it not because you see, but because you believe. I don't see how the car runs. I don't see that proper gas was placed in there when I pumped it. It could have been something else that's going to make it explode. But I just believe it because I have good reason to do so. That enough history and experience has happened in me that I find this to be credible. And that's the way we live with our relationships, especially the ones that are deeper. That you have proved yourself to be someone who is credible, someone whose character doesn't alter all the time, and so I can place my trust in you. And every one of us knows how difficult that is to get back when we have betrayed it, or someone's betrayed our trust, because I no longer find them credible. And so in the mind, what happens when we believe is that I don't see something, and yet I have reasons to believe it. And so the will begins to participate, and it makes a firm assent to something. It pushes the mind as it were, to adhere to something that it doesn't perfectly see. So, for example, my mother does not believe that I'm her child. Can you believe that? Why doesn't she believe that I'm her child? Because she knows that I'm her child. You don't believe in something if you see it. Because sight and belief don't go together. Even the scriptures tell us that, don't they? I walk by faith right now, not by sight. Because once I see it, I no longer have to believe it. Because believing involves the will to place myself in the hands of another. My mother doesn't have to believe that she is my mother because she sees it, she knows it, she was there. There's no unseeing it. What happens in faith then is that because of the things we mentioned earlier in terms of grace and friendship, God reaches into the soul and, as it were, moves the will. Because it's a theological virtue. We have to work with it, but God is in the soul acting in faith, moving the will to firmly assent, to firmly adhere to all that He has revealed. What helps you, though, is to study. It has been said over and over again that no one ever leaves the church because of what she teaches, but because of what they think that she teaches, or the way they understand what she teaches. But one of the things that is absolutely apparent to me in working with, in particular, seminarians, and being myself a former seminarian, that every time I learn something new about what the church actually taught, I remember having that feeling, and these men had the same feeling. Why didn't anyone tell me? Why didn't I know this earlier? The truth is symphonic. All these pieces go together, and it's beautiful. It helps to study, to remove those things in us that could be obstacles to God moving the will and moving thus the intellect to assent firmly to this truth. Because even though God moves it, He doesn't force it. All the kinds of acts that we have with God in terms of the theological virtues, faith, hope, and charity, are all, as it were, theandric acts. They are God and man. We work together on those. I can refuse Him. I don't lose my faith like I lose a set of car keys. I simply stop organizing my life in accordance with the truth of the faith. And that's something entirely different. It can happen by virtue of sin, but it also can happen by virtue of filling my mind constantly with a different creed. The creed that comes, of course, from the world. What am I to believe? Because they don't see either. What lights will you use? The consistent teaching of the church that has not altered for 2,000 years? It has grown in organic fashion, but not changed in terms of the truth. Or will you believe the fat of the day? But this requires that you know your faith. And that requires you to take time, to take out your catechism, to study, to ask questions, to go to the church and participate in the various programs that they have, to continually educate yourself. That word educate, educare, means to lead someone out. Thus does St. Thomas say, when he's praying for light before he studied, he used to say, "Lead me out of the twofold darkness in which I was born, the darkness of error and the darkness of sin, into the light of full truth." And when you do that, and when you put no obstacle before God, then that assent that is given by the intellect firmly grasps the truth and holds on to it tightly, even though all the things around you are moving in different directions, because you have grasped it, and the mind is for grasping. Ultimately, as G.K. Chesterton once said, an open mind is open like a mouth is open for the purpose of clamping down on something. And the mind was made for the truth, who is Jesus Christ. Tomorrow, we're going to speak about the will and firmly resolving to do that which is necessary to be a disciple.